Did you know there's a psychological technique so dangerous, warrior monks were forbidden from teaching it? Those who learned it could turn fear into fuel and face death without flinching. But here's the secret. It wasn't about becoming fearless. It was about realizing that your entire sense of self is a story your mind created to keep you weak and controllable. Modern psychology buried this knowledge, not because it's false, but because it works too well. A population that masters these techniques can't be manipulated by fear or sedated by comfort. The ancient warriors knew your mind isn't a sanctuary. It's a battlefield. The battle isn't against anxiety or stress. It's against a domesticated version of yourself, engineered to obey, ready to stop fixing your mind and start forging it into a weapon. Subscribe now. This isn't self-help. It's a forbidden archive of warrior psychology society tried to erase. The mind that says later is the mind that keeps you trapped. Act now. Have you ever heard of a mental technique so powerful that it was forbidden to be taught outside the inner circles of warrior monasteries? A psychological ritual so dangerous that monks would warn their students. Once you learn to see your mind this way, you can never return to comfortable ignorance. This wasn't meditation as we know it today. It wasn't about relaxation, stress relief, or some app promising inner peace in 10 minutes. This was a weaponized system of consciousness control. It turned ordinary men into living instruments of pure will, individuals so mentally fortified that torture became meaningless, fear became fuel, and death became a teacher, not a threat. These ancient warriors discovered something that modern psychology desperately tries to suppress because it can't be packaged, sold, or controlled by external authorities. They found that your mind is not your sanctuary, it is your battlefield. And there is a ritual, a forbidden sequence of mental practices that allows you to enter that battlefield and emerge as someone your former self would not even recognize. You are not supposed to know this. These techniques were deliberately hidden, encoded in cryptic texts, and whispered only to those who had proven they could handle the weight of true mental sovereignty. Here's the truth they keep from you. You are not suffering from anxiety, depression, or a lack of motivation. You are suffering from a mind that has been caged so long it has forgotten it was born to hunt. The ritual begins in darkness, but not the darkness of closed eyes on a comfortable cushion. It begins in the darkness of facing what you have spent your entire life running from. The ancient warriors called this first stage the confrontation with the void. Imagine this. Every warrior, before even touching a sword, had to spend 7 days alone in a cave with nothing but water and his own thoughts. No light, no sound, no distraction, just the suffocating presence of his own mind, unfiltered and unavoidable. What do you think happens when you remove every escape route? When you can't scroll, can't consume, can't numb yourself, can't run, your mind reveals its true architecture. Every thought you've suppressed comes flooding to the surface. Every fear you've medicated with busyness. Every shame you've hidden behind achievement. Every rage you've swallowed to maintain your social mask. The warrior was forced to sit in the middle of this psychological storm without resistance, without judgment, and without the comforting lie that these thoughts defined him. He learned the first forbidden truth. Thoughts are not commands. They are weather, and you are not the storm. You are the sky that contains it. Most people never learn this because modern life is engineered for constant distraction, specifically to prevent this confrontation. Your phone isn't connecting you to the world. It's protecting you from yourself. The warrior had no such protection. He either learned to observe his mind without being destroyed by it, or he broke. There was no middle ground. Those who survived this darkness emerged with something most people will never develop. The ability to sit in their own consciousness without needing it to be different. This is the foundation of true mental freedom, the first step on a path that was never meant for the masses. It's the rediscovery of a power that lies dormant within you, waiting for you to be brave enough to face the darkness. This is just the beginning of the ritual, the first gate. Beyond it lies a level of self-mastery and power that is almost unimaginable in our modern world. If this resonates with you, if you feel that call to reclaim your untamed mind, then stick around. There's so much more to uncover. Thanks for watching. The darkness of the ritual's first stage was only the preparation. The second stage is where the technique becomes truly forbidden, where it crosses from meditation into psychological warfare. The ancient warriors practiced what Zen monasteries called koan training, but they used it in a way that has been systematically erased from mainstream Buddhist teaching. It's considered too destabilizing, too effective, too dangerous for a society built on the illusion of a solid identity. They would take a question, not a question with an answer, but one designed to destroy the thinking mind itself, and hold it in their consciousness for months. Questions like, what is the sound of one hand clapping? If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. What was your original face before your parents were born? These aren't riddles to be solved. They are cognitive landmines designed to detonate your entire conceptual framework. The warrior would sit with one of these questions, not thinking about it, not analyzing it, but becoming it, breathing it, living inside it. They'd continue until the rational mind, desperate for resolution, and exhausted from searching for an answer that doesn't exist in logic, finally surrenders. And in that surrender, in that moment when thought collapses, something else emerges. The Japanese called it kensho, sudden awakening. It's the direct experience of consciousness before language, before story, before the comfortable prison of personality. You'll realize in a moment of absolute clarity that everything you call myself is a constructed illusion. Your personality isn't who you are. It's a survival strategy you developed in childhood. Your beliefs are not truth. They're inherited programs running on autopilot. Your emotions are not facts. They're chemical reactions interpreted through the lens of past trauma. The warrior who experienced this awakening could never be manipulated again. Why? Because manipulation requires a fixed identity to target, and he no longer had one. He became fluid, adaptive, impossible to predict or control. This is why the technique was forbidden. Societies need predictable citizens, and this ritual creates psychological ghost individuals who move through the world but are no longer attached to its rules. But this awakening isn't the end. The third stage of the ritual is what separates warrior psychology from spiritual bypassing. Most meditation practices stop at peace. They teach you to calm your mind, find your center, and breathe through difficulty. The ancient warriors went further. They practiced what the samurai called shi-in-agori, death training, not as a metaphor but as a visceral, repeated psychological experience of dying. Every morning before dawn, the warrior would sit in meditation and visualize his own death in graphic detail. The blade entering his abdomen, the cold spreading through his organs, the taste of blood, the fading of vision, the final breath. He would experience this death completely, without flinching, without escaping into philosophy or spiritual platitudes. He would die, fully, completely, and then he would open his eyes and realize, I am still here. This practice rewires something fundamental in human psychology that keeps most people trapped in mediocrity. We avoid, we procrastinate, we compromise, we betray our values, we accept less than we deserve. Why? Because somewhere in the darkness of our unconscious mind lives the belief that we have infinite time, that tomorrow is guaranteed, that death is something that happens to other people, later, far away. The warrior killed this delusion every single morning. He died before breakfast, and when you have already died, when you have felt the absolute finality of existence, everything changes. Discomfort becomes irrelevant. Rejection becomes meaningless. Failure becomes feedback. Pain becomes information. You stop negotiating with life. You stop waiting for permission. You stop trading your truth for temporary comfort. Because a man who has died cannot be threatened. There is nothing left to take from him. This isn't about depression. This is about liberation. The darkness is not your enemy. It is your training ground. Thanks for watching. If this resonated with you, subscribe for more. Alright, pause for a second. If you're still watching, you've just crossed a line. Most people can't handle these kinds of truths. They'll click away, back to comfortable content, back to feel-good speeches that promise change but never demand real transformation. But you're still here. That means a part of you gets what I'm saying. A part of you knows that almost everything you've been taught about your own mind is designed to keep you weak and easy to manage. So, I need you to do something right now. In the comments below, answer this question with total honesty. What part of yourself have you been running from? What truth about your life have you been avoiding by staying busy, staying distracted, staying comfortable? Write it down. Not for me, for you. Because the first step in this forbidden ritual is to admit what you already know but have been too afraid to face. The warriors who truly mastered their minds didn't start with strength. They started with honesty. Brutal, uncomfortable, liberating honesty. Drop your answer below. No judgment, only truth. This is your first step. The fourth stage of this ritual is where most modern people fail. It requires something our comfort-addicted culture has completely bred out of us, the willingness to embrace suffering as a teacher, not an enemy. The ancient warriors practiced what they called kanro, deliberate hardship. This wasn't suffering for its own sake. It was calculated exposure to discomfort that forges psychological resilience the same way fire forges steel. They would sit in freezing waterfalls for hours. They would fast for days. They would hold painful physical positions until their mind separated from the body's screaming demands for relief. This wasn't some kind of self-punishment. It was a systematic desensitization to the tyranny of comfort. Because here's the secret that will change how you see your entire life. You are not afraid of hard things. You are afraid of discomfort. And there's a profound difference. Think about it. Hard things like starting a business, ending a toxic relationship, or chasing a difficult goal, they aren't inherently painful. What makes them unbearable is your mind's resistance to the discomfort they produce. The anxiety, the uncertainty, the vulnerability, the fear of failure. Your mind has been trained to interpret any discomfort as danger, any uncertainty as a threat, any challenge as something to be avoided, medicated, or scrolled past. The warrior's hardship training rewired this response completely. He learned through direct, repeated experience that discomfort is not damage. Cold water won't kill you. Hunger won't break you. Physical pain has a limit, and that limit is far, far beyond where your mind tells you to quit. When you discover this truth in your body, it transfers to everything else in your life. Difficult conversations stop being unbearable. Financial risks stop being paralyzing. Rejection stops being devastating. Why? Because you've sat in actual real suffering and discovered that you are larger than any discomfort. You contain it. It does not contain you. This is the forbidden knowledge. Your mind has been lying to you about your limits, and the only way to discover your true capacity is to deliberately cross the boundaries your comfort-seeking mind has drawn for you. The modern world will call this toxic, extreme, and necessary. Of course it will. Because a population that embraces difficulty cannot be controlled by the promise of convenience. Now, the fifth stage is maybe the most psychologically advanced part of the ritual. It's a practice that modern mindfulness has completely gutted in its translation from a warrior tradition to a wellness trend. The ancient warriors practiced mushin mind, but this term has been so catastrophically misunderstood that it's become almost meaningless today. Mushin does not mean having an empty mind. It does not mean stopping your thoughts. It means developing the ability to act without the interference of self-conscious thought. It means responding to reality directly, without the delay of analysis, judgment, or fear. The warrior trained this state through a brutal practice called makuso, sitting in meditation immediately before combat. Imagine that, in the moments before a life or death struggle, they weren't hyping themselves up or planning every move. They were dropping into a state of profound stillness, letting go of the chattering, analytical mind. This allowed them to move with pure instinct, with a clarity and speed that a thinking mind could never achieve. The thinking mind is slow. It hesitates. It doubts. Mushin is the state of pure flow, where action and awareness become one. This isn't just for warriors. It's for the artist lost in their work, the athlete in the zone, the speaker who commands a room without a script. It's the ultimate state of high performance, and it's accessed not by thinking harder, but by learning to get out of your own way. You train this by facing pressure, by putting yourself in situations that demand your full presence, and practicing the release of that inner critic. You've stayed to the end. You've heard the truth. Now the question is what you'll do with it. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more. A warrior sits in stillness before battle, not to calm himself, but to sharpen himself. He summons every possible fear, death, failure, pain, dishonor. He watches these thoughts arise and pass without believing them, without obeying them. Then, he stands and fights. His body moves with a precision his thinking mind could never match. Why? Because thought is slow. Consciousness is fast. When you strip away that self-conscious voice in your head, the one narrating your every move and judging your performance, you unlock a level of capability that feels almost superhuman. Athletes call this flow state. Warriors called it mushin, and the way to get there isn't what you've been told. It's not about clearing your mind. It's about training your mind to operate in the background while your awareness moves to the foreground. Most of us experience life through a filter of thought. We don't see reality. We see our thoughts about reality. We don't feel emotions. We feel our interpretation of them. We act not from clarity but from a confused mess of competing voices in our heads. The warrior trained to collapse this distance between awareness and action, to see without thinking about seeing, to move without thinking about moving. This is what made him lethal. Not just physical skill, but psychological immediacy. You can develop this same capacity, not through sanitized meditation practices that promise relaxation, but through the uncomfortable work of observing your mind when it's under pressure, when it's afraid, when it's desperate to control the outcome. That is where mushin is forged, in the fire of real stakes. But there's another level, a final stage so powerful it was once a forbidden ritual, taught only to those who had sworn oaths of loyalty. It's called Hashiryo, beyond thinking, beyond not thinking. This is where the warrior transcends the duality of control and surrender, of self and other. He becomes a living paradox, completely present and completely detached, fully engaged yet unattached to the outcome. Reaching this state isn't about following steps. It's a recognition that happens after years of intense practice confronting darkness, meditating on death, developing mushin. Suddenly, something shifts. The warrior stops trying to master his mind because he realizes he is not separate from it. The observer and the observed merge into a single field of awareness. There's no longer a you trying to control your mind. There is only consciousness experiencing itself. This might sound abstract or mystical, but it has the most practical advantage imaginable. It grants you complete freedom from the need for external validation, complete immunity to manipulation, complete liberation from the fear of loss. When you directly experience that there is no separate self to defend, the entire structure of human suffering collapses. You can engage fully in life without being destroyed by failure. You can love without being broken by loss. You can pursue your purpose without being paralyzed by the opinions of others. This isn't because you've become cold or indifferent. It's because you've discovered that what you truly are cannot be threatened by anything that happens in the world of form. The warrior who reached Hashiryo wasn't invincible. He could still be killed, but he could not be defeated. Because defeat requires you to identify with the outcome, and he had transcended outcome. He fought with complete commitment and zero attachment. This made him unstoppable, not because he couldn't lose, but because losing had no power over him. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing for more insights into the warrior's path. This is the forbidden ritual. Not a technique you practice once, but a way of being that you forge through repeated exposure to the edges of your psychological capacity. The modern world has hidden this from you, not through conspiracy, but through comfort. You've been given every tool to avoid the darkness: entertainment, medication, distraction, validation. Why? Because a society of individuals who have walked through their own darkness and emerged sovereign cannot be controlled. They cannot be sold a cure for a manufactured disease. They cannot be frightened into compliance. They cannot be manipulated with the promise of safety or the threat of discomfort. The ancient warriors weren't superhuman. They were simply willing to do what you have been trained to avoid, face the truth of their own mind without the comfort of illusion, and that willingness changed everything. If you have made it this far, you are ready for what comes next. This is not the end of the teaching. This is the beginning of your training. Everything I have shared is worthless if it remains intellectual knowledge, another interesting idea you consume and forget. The warrior tradition demands embodiment, practice, direct experience, and if you are ready to go deeper, to access the techniques that cannot be spoken on public platforms, to join others who are walking this path of mental sovereignty, then you need to become part of this archive. Subscribe to this channel, not because I need your subscription, but because you need the commitment. The ancient warriors understood that transformation requires lineage, requires continuous exposure to truth, requires surrounding yourself with knowledge that the mainstream world will never offer you. Every video on this channel is another piece of the forbidden archive, another technique they did not want you to learn, another truth they hoped you would never discover. Subscribe now, not tomorrow, now, because the mind that says I'll do it later is the same mind that has kept you trapped in comfortable mediocrity your entire life. The warrior acts immediately. Subscribe and then watch what happens when you stop consuming content and start forging consciousness. The ritual is complete. The knowledge is yours. What you do with it will determine whether you remain a domesticated mind, living someone else's life, or become what you are always meant to be, a sovereign consciousness walking through a world that fears your awakening. The choice has always been yours. The warriors simply showed you that you have won.